unseated, undivided, torn apart but reunited.
Ani Wiikwemkoong, Kariasanaway Dijnakas. Hello, Wiikwemkoong. It is Aambe Giigididaa Wiikwemkoong. Let's talk Wiikwemkoong. Yes, our second show into 2021. And I want to say welcome to everybody who is joining us for this show here. And a lot of, I guess, comments and shares on our talk show Facebook page. So I want to say chimigwech to everybody who is getting involved, getting engaged, and getting updated as to what is happening in our community. And speaking of that, you see me sitting to my left here. We have our guest, Diane Jacko, who is the manager of Nodmadawin Mental Health Clinic here at Wiikwemkoong. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you, Carrie.
So what we wanted to talk about, Diane, in our community, we have been seeing a lot of challenge, if not COVID, maybe impacts of COVID in our community amongst people of all ages. We're getting used to this new norm, adjusting and again with that, the challenges. We've also seen concerns about increased use of illicit drugs. We've seen the challenges losing some of our community members, especially our youth, in the last couple of months. And I know the staff, the services that you provide at Nodmadawin Mental Health Clinic, you deal with this on a regular basis. You're there as a really integral resource in our community to help people through journeys such as this. Maybe just a quick little overview on some of those services that you do provide.
Okay, I'll give you that. So we provide services through Nodmadawin Mental Health Clinic Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. We also provide services to the entire island, the First Nations of Manitoulin, 24/7 through our crisis response team. We also provide 24/7 response to harm reduction. So those numbers will be advertised at the end of this show. So when we're talking about grief with the losses of our community, a key point that I think is really important is for people to understand that you need to feel those feelings of grief. A lot of times what happens is we get referrals right away when somebody loses a loved one, and the family gets concerned that they're sad and they're crying, but that's normal. That's a normal response to grief. So we need to allow people to feel those feelings and to live in the moment, because a lot of times what happens is people feel that they're depressed, they're sad, and it's important to understand that depression is something that is reflective of our past. We're not happy with a decision we made in the past, or it's impacting us today. The other thing that we hear a lot about is anxiety. And what that is worrying about the future, worrying about what's going to happen tonight or tomorrow or next week. So it hasn't happened yet, so we're worrying about that. So living in the moment is really, really important. And the staff at Nodmadawin are very skilled in how to help people live in the moment. We call them grounding techniques. So one of the things is that you just focus on, 5 things you can hear right now, and then 4 things you can see, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can touch. So things like that, that's just one grounding technique. There's so many grounding techniques. The staff are very skilled at doing the job that they do. So it's really important to live in the moment. There is been a lot of talk in the community about increased drug use. So a message I want to get across regarding the drug use is that don't use alone. The message would be, don't use, but people are going to use, so don't use alone. Be safe. Call the harm reduction line. There's also an overdose prevention line if you are alone, and how that works is you call the line, and then you do what you're going to do, and then they call you back, or they stay on the line, just to make sure you're going to be safe. So we always want to make sure people are going to be safe and taken care of, and that they feel that they're cared for. what we want to help people with is to remember to get back to our teachings, get back to the way we lived off the land. You know, we use our culture and our language as healing, and that's really important in our community. Society is so fast-paced today. If you have an answer or if you have a question, you Google it. You have your answer just like that. If you have a symptom, people Google it. They self-diagnose. You know, there's so many things like that. Everything is fast, fast, fast. If you want to talk to somebody or call somebody, you just pick up your cell phone, which is usually in somebody's hand, and you text somebody, you call them. So everything is really fast. So what happens is when we have problems or we have feelings that are not pleasant, or sad, or mad, or angry, or whatever that is, we want them gone just as fast. So it's important to remember that we need to slow down. We need to work through those feelings. We need to process them. And in order to work beyond those feelings and issues that we have, you have to slow down. Sometimes people will resort to doing other things, such as maybe drinking or gambling or doing drugs or something, as a way to numb the feelings or as a way to not think about what's going on, because they don't want to feel that, and they're not pleasant. Nobody wants to feel that, but it's important to process them, to move through them. And I always say to people is that we work so hard to give our kids what we didn't have growing up. We forget to give them what we did have growing up, which is all of our teachings that we have, all the values that we live by, working for what you want in life, working for what you need in life, and helping others and teaching others and those kinds of things. So we need to remember that.
And based on your years working here in the community, have you ever seen, resources that are really needed to such an amount in the community? Have you seen it like this before? I know we haven't had COVID before, but...
It's definitely different. It's definitely a different time this year especially. Our services have grown significantly. When I began working at Naumaduan, there was maybe 5 staff, and now we have about 20. We do have a crisis team that services the island, and we're very thankful for that, because when there was crisis in the community, it was the mental health team that would have to step up and respond. And they did. They're very dedicated to the community. They did whatever was needed. And thankfully now we have a crisis team where the work is spread out a little bit more, so people aren't, at risk of getting burnt out or getting too tired to help, that kind of thing. But I don't know that the need has really changed. It's people are reaching out more for services now. They're trusting services better, so that confidence is being built back up.
So, and Diane, I guess really the message that we want to hear here is don't be afraid to step forward. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Don't be nervous to make that call. Even if you have a question on what is, a normal, I guess.
Yes.
Like instead of Googling and self-diagnosing from the internet, that's what you had mentioned, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we don't want anybody to be afraid to reach out for help. We're there 24/7 through the crisis line, and the numbers will be advertised after this show. There's always going to be somebody answering the phone, even for the harm reduction. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Everything is confidential. We're there to help you. We want to help you. We want you to be safe.
Perfect. Miigwech for all of that information, Diane. And like Diane said, a lot of those resource numbers will be shown at the end of the show as we're bringing in the credits. And she did mention the crisis response team, which Diane works with and supervises here in Wiikwemkoong. And our next guest actually is the coordinator for the crisis response team here in Wiikwemkoong, and that is Peter Vanvolkingbugh. So he's coming up, so stay tuned. Ani, and welcome back. And as you can see, we have our next guest here, Peter Vanvolkingbugh. And as mentioned earlier, he is the coordinator for our MiniDome crisis response team. So welcome, Peter.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And as we heard earlier, we were talking with Diane Jacko about the mental health and wellness opportunities, resources here in Wiikwemkoong. The crisis response team is fairly new, and you're fairly new into the position as well here in Wiikwemkoong. Maybe just give us a quick little overview on some of the services provided through the crisis response team.
Yeah, absolutely. So the crisis team basically exists to support individuals through difficult events in their lives, from anything as small as panic attacks and the regular wear and tear of everyday life, to some of the larger, higher profile incidents, working alongside of police officers. But functionally, we just want to make sure that we're making sure that individuals and families don't have to go through difficult times by themselves. And so that's sort of the heart behind most of the services that we do provide.
And Peter, you had mentioned the type of services. Now, people don't really understand what a crisis is.
Yeah.
So what is a crisis? What defines a crisis?
Yeah, good question. We would see a crisis as any situation that puts people in a position where their normal coping mechanisms aren't going to keep them safe and healthy. So again, for each person, that changes depending on the day, depending on how my week has been, depending on what things have happened in recent history for me. But a crisis essentially can be any situation that puts us in a spot where we don't really know how to cope properly. And so we want to make sure, again, that people are reaching out and accessing services when they may be at the end of their options, when they don't feel like they have any more tools in the tool belt for themselves personally. We want them to be able to reach out and be supported through those moments.
And in those moments where there's a big question, they don't know, they could be panicking. You said you want them to reach out in those times. What are some of the maybe worst case scenarios maybe that you've come across, in a sense, not worst case, but situations where people have made maybe the wrong decision because maybe they don't know that they can reach out to the crisis team?
I think the wrong decision, generally speaking, is to just isolate ourselves and try to carry everything alone. I think that we were made for community, we were made for supporting each other, and that even though some of us may feel bigger and stronger than others at different times, that there's not a single one of us that is strong enough to carry everything we're going to come across in our lives as parents, as coworkers, as spouses and partners. We need people to lean on. And so the wrong decision, you'll know in the moment when you're isolating yourself and you're trying to carry too much, and that's putting you in a position that the traumatic or the critical incidents in our lives can be too much for us and cause us to cope in unhealthy ways and can cause patterns of behavior that are going to leave long-lasting impacts.
And as we were discussing with Diane earlier, with COVID, the challenge of COVID in the past year in Wiikwemkoong as well as the world. Have you seen any changes in the work that you do in relation to maybe what people are going through?
Yeah, I mean, I think Diane said it well earlier, where the realities for people are similar, that we wake up every day and live our lives the way we normally would with some different guardrails. But I think the one main thing that people are missing desperately is connection. With social media, we're more connected than we've ever been, but we're probably, because of the pandemic, now lonelier than we've ever been. And social media allows us to put up kind of a fake version of ourselves to the world around us. And what we see often is that when we actually interact with people, the almost excitement to just be around another person outside of their little bubble. And so I think it's also made our work kind of challenging in the sense that normally in a non-pandemic time, we would go where people are already gathering. We would go and interact with people where they're already coming together for other community events or for school. And obviously that's been limited now. And so it changes the way we do prevention and outreach and promotion. And so there's been a few different, we've tried to be creative and think outside the box, but those are some of the challenges.
And that's where I want to ask you about right now, the what do we do kind of thing. What are the expectations if someone were to pick up the phone and call the crisis response team? What would that person get? What is the process? What happens when somebody makes a call?
Yeah. 100% of the time, it will be answered directly by one of our team members. And so that could be 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, and that could be 4 a.m. on a Friday night. We want to make sure that the standard of care is the same 24 hours a day. So anyone who is reaching out to our team can expect to speak to one of our staff members, to one of our team members, to be spoken to like a human being, not a call center. We don't put people on hold, generally speaking. We try our best to interact with the calls as they come in. And people can expect to be heard and listened to. We really do our best, and we're very grateful to work alongside of a team that is very empathetic and very resourceful when it comes to creatively walking with people through their crisis. We would love to wave the magic wand and remove people from their crisis, but that's not realistic. But what people can expect is that maybe now they don't have to carry it by themselves, and that whether it is an opportunity to check in with a crisis team member on the phone for a phone call, or whether it is helping solve some of the larger puzzle pieces that come with some of the bigger incidents, we want to make sure that we are not trying to cram every crisis response into a cookie cutter, assuming that everybody needs the same type of support. And so they can expect a real person, one of our team members, and they can expect a personalized touch to whatever that crisis response requires.
And really, your team, very well experienced, trained to do the kind of work and counseling that they are doing to respond to the crisis.
That's right.
So at what point would you say you take the call? Do the police get involved? Do the ambulance, do you get them involved, paramedic?
Well, absolutely, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're taking the best care of people that we possibly can. Sometimes the police are not the right call, and sometimes they are. We don't want people to be afraid to call us because they're concerned that we're just going to pass them off to the police. But our job is also to make sure that when we leave their situation, whether it's their home or whether it's the phone call, that we can guarantee the best of our abilities that they will be safe and they'll be taken care of. There are times where we're engaging in these situations and we don't have the level of confidence to say that if we left right now and left everything as it is, that the situation would resolve itself safely. And when that becomes a concern, we want to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to protect people. And sometimes we protect people from their own decisions. And that would be when we would get law enforcement involved, because we believe that every single individual that interacts with us is worth protecting and is worth keeping safe, and that we wouldn't legitimately be doing the best version of our job if we weren't aware of our limitations and when we have to engage police or ambulance.
And Peter, keeping the community safe, right? Let's talk about a couple of the new initiatives, programs, if you want to call them that we're seeing the team involved with in Wiikwemkoong, as well as the other communities that are serviced with the with your team.
Yeah, so getting creative during a pandemic can be a little difficult, and I think people are kind of zoomed out a little bit. We're very grateful for the technology, but again, the connection piece, I think, is such a huge part of being a human being. And so again, an experienced team, a creative team, we pioneered a program called Safe Walk to School. We had identified through the help of the school board and through some of our community partners that a large number of students on the island, but specifically in Wiikwemkoong, walk to school, and that can be an opportunity for us to connect organically with the community where, again, they're already gathering. Without actually gathering, we can sort of, give a wave and be visible. I think that visibility piece and the accessibility piece has been a huge part of why we've been able to continue the work that we're doing. And by the same measure, at nighttime, we've attempted to hit a bit of a different demographic by doing community patrols on high traffic nights of the month, where we are able to be out in the community, again, visible and accessible at a time of night when, generally speaking, other services are not necessarily as easily accessible. And that just generally will look like, some people in some bright yellow jackets walking down the road. Some of us waving at other people and just trying to connect and be part of things. Because again, I think sometimes a barrier to accessing a service is not necessarily being aware and not necessarily being sure of how accessible it is. And so by us being on the road at different times of day when there's higher volumes of traffic, we just want to make sure we're doing what we can to make sure people know they can access us, know that they can reach out, and know that we're around.
So on that last one, the community patrols at night. So if you were to come across, say, a group of say, youth, so you would approach them. Would you say hi? What kind of an interaction would you see to a group?
Yeah, well,
Give me a scenario.
Yeah, so we went on Halloween would be one of our first, probably our second or third one in Wiki, and yeah, we were checking in with the parents on trick-or-treaters. We were talking to groups of kids as they were going door to door. Most recently, we did one about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and it's really just a mobile check-in. You know, again, you never know what you're going to stumble on. You never know the type of day people had, and you never know when a check-in can go a long way. And so we would, yeah, I mean, visibility and accessibility comes with also being personable. So we do our best to be friendly. We do, try to make sure that people are safe, that our team carries first aid supplies on them, as well as naloxone, just trying to make sure we're prepared to respond if necessary. And if not, check in and have a nice visit with whoever happens to be in the neighborhood and, move on with our evenings.
Great. Miigwech. And I really thank you for being here and sharing that information about the program and what your team is doing. So, miigwech to your team members as well, and all of the on-call staff that you do have. And as Peter and Diane mentioned, don't be afraid to reach out. And you do have your crisis response phone number as well, right?
Yeah.
Did you want to mention what
sure.
the phone number?
At any point, island-wide, please feel free to reach out at 705-348-1937. We'd be happy to take the call and see if we can help walk with you through a crisis situation.
So we know that we're going to be protected. At least that's
Do our
the
best.
whole goal here. And I know that is what our community leadership have been speaking about as one of their priorities is, the community health, well-being, and safety. So again, we commend the work that your team did, as well as Nodmonwin Mental Health Clinic as well. So again, miigwech to our guests, Diane and Peter, just sharing some information again. As both mentioned, we will have some valuable information, contact numbers in our credits. So again, I want to say miigwech to everybody for joining us for this really important discussion that we had to have in our community, mental health and safety. And we wish to invite you to our Facebook page as well, Aambe Giigididaa Wiikwemkoong, Let's Talk Wiikwemkoong talk show and news page. So miigwech, and we'll see you next time.